For decades, we've been hearing two completely opposite stories about where humanity is headed. In one corner, you've got the story of a planet that's just straining under the weight of too many people. And in the other, a future of empty cradles and societies that are literally shrinking. So, which one is it? Are we facing a population bomb or a population bust? The headlines love to make it sound like it has to be one or the other. But the real story? Well, it's a lot more complicated and, frankly, a lot more interesting than that. Because here's the twist. For the first time in modern history, the answer isn't one or the other. The answer is both. Both things are happening at the exact same time. And understanding this paradox, that's the key to understanding maybe the biggest challenge of the 21st century. So yeah, let's dive in. Okay, first up, let's look at the case for overpopulation. And I want to be clear, this argument isn't really about feelings or opinions. It's rooted in the hard science of our planet's ecology and resources. As of right now, in mid-2024, there are about 8.2 billion of us on this planet. I mean, just let that number sink in for a second. It's a staggering figure, and the impact of that many people is absolutely undeniable. The sheer scale of humanity is pushing our Earth's systems right to their limits. And that leads us to this really crucial idea: ecological overshoot. The easiest way to think about it is like a bank account. For a long time now, humanity has been withdrawing natural resources. We're talking fresh water, forests, healthy soil, way faster than the Earth can regenerate them. We are basically living on ecological credit, and that bill is definitely coming due. To actually put a number on this, scientists developed what they call the planetary boundaries framework. It's pretty cool. It identifies 9 critical life support systems for our planet, things like our climate, our oceans, our biodiversity. And each one has a measurable limit, a safe operating space for humanity. Crossing these boundaries means we're wandering into a danger zone of unpredictable and maybe irreversible environmental change. Now, here's what's so wild and honestly pretty sobering. Look at the current status. As of 2025, we've already blown past the safe limits for 7 of these 9 critical systems. 7. We're talking climate change, fresh water, biodiversity, the whole shebang. This isn't some problem for our grandkids. It's happening right now. Our current population, with our current way of life, is just fundamentally unsustainable. And this slide gives you a perfect real-world example. Let's just pick one resource: fresh water. Back in 1950, there were about 18,000 cubic meters of fresh water available for every person on Earth. Fast forward to today, and that number has crashed to just over 5,000. It's simple math, really. More people means less to go around for each of us. So from an ecological view, the evidence is pretty clear. Our planet is overstretched. But just as that picture comes into sharp focus, the entire story takes a hard right turn. So let's flip to the other side of this paradox, the argument that we're actually headed for a population collapse. You see, the engine of population growth has always been fertility, and that engine is seriously starting to stall out. Get this. Back in the 1960s, the average woman on this planet had more than 5 children in her lifetime. Today, that number's been slashed by more than half, down to just 2.25. That is barely above the 2.1 kids needed just to keep the population level. And this is way more than just a trend. It could actually be a trap. Demographers have a name for it: the low fertility trap. It's a theory that says once a country's fertility rate drops below a certain point, a bunch of feedback loops kick in that make it almost impossible for that society to ever bounce back to replacement levels. So what are these feedback loops? Well, they're driven by 3 main things. First, there's a simple demographic force. When a small generation grows up, you just have fewer potential mothers, which means even fewer babies in the next generation. Second, a sociological force. Small families just become the new normal, the cultural ideal. And third, you have a powerful economic force. The insane cost of housing, education, and childcare just makes having kids a huge financial burden. And if you want to see a real-world example of this trap in action, look no further than South Korea. In 2023, its fertility rate hit an absolutely staggering low of 0.72. That's not even 1 child per woman. And this is despite the government throwing hundreds of billions of dollars at the problem, trying to convince people to have more kids. It just goes to show you, once that trap closes, it is incredibly tough to get out. The most immediate problem this creates is economic. It's called a dependency crisis. The number of seniors for every 100 people in the workforce is just skyrocketing. In Japan, that number has nearly tripled since 1990. Think about that. This puts unbelievable pressure on pensions, on healthcare, and on the whole economy, as a smaller and smaller workforce has to support a bigger and bigger elderly population. So, how can both of these things be true? How can we be in a state of ecological overshoot and, at the same time, facing a demographic collapse? Well, the answer is that these things are happening in different places. We are living through what's being called the Great Demographic Divergence. The world isn't on one single demographic path anymore, not at all. Instead, it's splitting apart into these totally distinct groups, and each one is facing a completely different future. So let's break down who's on which path. Okay, this slide right here, this is the absolute core of our entire explainer. You can think of the world's countries as being sorted into 3 tiers. The first tier, which is about 28% of the world's population, includes places like China, Japan, and Germany. Their populations have already peaked and are now shrinking. The second tier, about 10% of us, includes countries like Brazil and Vietnam. They're going to peak sometime in the next 30 years. But then look at that third tier. A massive 62% of the world's population lives in countries like India, Nigeria, and even the USA that are projected to keep growing for decades. And this chart just visualizes that split perfectly. You can see it right there. A really significant chunk of the world is already grappling with aging and decline, while a clear majority is still on a path of growth. The crucial thing to get is that there is no single world population problem anymore. There are multiple, totally contradictory problems happening all at once. Now, the major geopolitical consequence of all this divergence is a historic shift in our planet's human center of gravity. For centuries, population and power were centered in places like Europe and East Asia. Now, and for the rest of this century, the demographic heartland of humanity is going to be sub-Saharan Africa. So what do we do about all this? How does a world that's facing opposite problems at the same time even begin to forge a sustainable path forward? Well, the challenges are obviously immense, but the strategies are actually becoming a lot clearer. Navigating this new reality is all about a tailored approach. There's no one-size-fits-all answer. For the countries that are still growing, the focus is on things like rights-based family planning and investing in health and education to turn that youth bulge into an economic boom, a demographic dividend. For the shrinking nations, it's about managing labor shortages with smart migration policies and learning how to tap into the economic power of their older citizens, what some people call the silver economy. It's a huge global balancing act. And it's so important to see that these demographic challenges don't just exist in a bubble. They are deeply, deeply connected with those big global goals for things like health, education, and equality. Empowering women, making sure girls can go to school, ensuring everyone has access to healthcare, these aren't just nice social goals, they are the most effective and humane tools we have for achieving a stable and sustainable global population. In the end, maybe we've been asking the wrong question all along. Maybe it's not about growth versus collapse. As this final thought suggests, the real goal might be to reach a sustainable peak and then manage a graceful contraction. If we can actually pull that off, then a smaller future population won't be seen as a disaster or a failure, but as the ultimate sign of our success and our maturity as a species.